what's up, everybody? Big Mike Sports. You already know the drill.
The one and only.
I'm back!
Big Mike here with you. Happy Valentine's Day as we celebrate the triumph of love overall. In this case being the Chiefs over the 49ers in the Super Bowl on Sunday. And I can't imagine any other way that you could interpret that. But anyway, the Chiefs dynasty is officially real as Mahomes goes for his third championship, matching 12 years of Brady's production in only 6. Now you see the statistical comparison between Mahomes and Brady up to this point in Mahomes' career, the first 6 years of both guys' careers. And Mahomes has him in every single category. Same amount of championships in about half the amount of time. And, for Tom Brady to get all those other championships, it took the second half of his career. The saying goes that Tom Brady had 2 separate Hall of Fame careers. Well, there's a little lull in between. Brady was well into his 30s when he started winning more championships. So Mahomes, who's to say that the foot needs to be taken off the pedal right now? Mahomes could go for a lot more, all depending, of course, on if this current regime sticks around in its current form. With Reed and Kelsey, they're both aging. They both floated retirement off and on. When Reed leaves, they might still be all right. But once Kelsey leaves, I don't know. Mahomes will have a lot more to deal with. The receivers have been a problem recently, so we'll see what happens. But Andy Reid has announced that he's coming back for next season to go for the three-peat. And I personally don't think that the three-peat will happen, although the Chiefs this season have shown that they can win it in a lot of different ways. They won it when Mahomes was being, one of the greatest quarterbacks regular season statistically wise ever on a tear. And then they also did it this season when the offense wasn't quite there, but the defense was able to carry them all the way. So they've shown that they can win it a few different ways. But as we all know, three-peat doesn't really happen. So it would be quite the test for them to be able to do it this time around. But if Reed coached until he was 70, forget about retiring for a second. If he coached until he was 70, I'm pretty sure he could pass Belichick in all the coaching categories. Now, I don't think he will coach up to that point because, he's already cemented his case for the Hall of Fame. He's already done it all. It would really just be a matter of just stacking accolades at that point, I guess, trying to become the best ever, which I don't know if that's necessarily in Andy Reid's wheelhouse or not, but he's already certainly cemented himself as one of the best coaches that there's ever been. Now, I know what everybody's thinking. Everybody saw the Antonio Brown tweet saying that the Lions would be up about 35-10 right now at some point in the second quarter. Now, it is true that this was kind of a relatively boring Super Bowl at first. It took both teams a while to kind of get going, of course, with the scoreless first quarter and the several fumbles that happened, and then the halftime score of, 10-3, 10-6? Pretty low-scoring game. Pretty low-scoring game in general. They even went to overtime, and they still only pushed this total at 47. Some people got it at 47.5. Some people got it at 46.5. But in most places, it closed at 47. So a push there. Only the second Super Bowl that's ever gone to overtime in history. But let me tell you something about the Lions if they ended up making this game. While it might be true that the Lions could have blitzed the Chiefs in the first half and, gone up like they did in the NFC Championship game, the same thing that happened in that game in the NFC Championship would have happened in this game. It was only a matter of time. It only depended on which stage it was. If the Lions made the Super Bowl and had, easily beaten the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, whichever way you want to put it, whether they went for the touchdown at the end of the first half, whether Josh Reynolds caught the fourth down ball to score a touchdown to make it 28-10 in that third quarter. If the Lions had made this game, they still would have blown it. It didn't matter whether it was the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. This team, nothing against them, but they just don't quite have the experience yet. So I think that once the moment got too big, they definitely would have blown either one of these games. Plus, as we've seen, Mahomes went down double digits in the playoffs, 5-1. All other quarterbacks are 2 and a million. So Mahomes is something different. Of course, we beat them earlier in the season, first game of the year to be precise, but they didn't have Kelsey in that game. So yeah, I think that if the Lions would have made it, they still would have lost the game at the end. Nothing against the team. I just think that they needed a little more experience. Sometimes you need these losses to learn from and get better. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That loss in the NFC Championship game will make this Lions team better in the long run. And as Dan Campbell has said, we are going to the Super Bowl next year. So mark it on your calendars. Lions going to the Super Bowl next year. And next year, we'll see Jared Goff hoisting the Lombardi and saying that he's going to Disney World. It was funny going to see the Disney World commercials with Patrick Mahomes, as he normally does. It just seemed right. Like, imagine if the 49ers had won and you had Brock Purdy saying that he's going to Disney World. It just doesn't quite
Nice shot.
hit the same. So, yeah, I mean, everything's in its rightful place, right? But, yeah, so this was one of the biggest legacy games ever, most likely, because Andy Reid and the Chiefs have largely cemented their legacies, and Shanahan has on the other side as well. Reid has cemented himself as an all-time coach. Shanahan as an all-time choker. And I don't want to be too harsh, but Shanahan is one of the greatest losers of all time. When it comes to the big moments, he chokes on a dime. That's why I went Chiefs in this game all the way. From the very beginning, even when the 49ers opened as favorites, I didn't believe it for a second. You knew as soon as the 49ers went up 10-0 in that second quarter and really did everything that they would end up doing. It was only a matter of time before Mahomes came back. I mean, that's kind of why, of course, it's had a little bit of time to kind of, grow on me a little bit and kind of set in. But I was pretty disappointed with this Super Bowl in the moment because, the first half was a little boring, a little sloppy, low scoring, a lot of fumbles. And then once Mahomes and the Chiefs went down 10-0, you kind of expected that they would end up coming back. So there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of drama. I mean, there was a little bit because you never know whether this would be the time that they do end up blowing it. But, I just thought that Mahomes and the Chiefs were going to win all the way. And it seems like they had a little edge in the coaching department. Because like I had said previously, the Chiefs had the better coach, better quarterback, and better defense. So they were the ones that I expected to win. And Andy Reid and the Chiefs showed their coaching edge when it came to this brand new lore update to kind of put the infamous meltdown into better perspective. And that is the new overtime rules. Another chapter in the haunting escapades of Kyle Shanahan in championship games. Now, Andy Reid and the Chiefs had stressed the new overtime rules ever since training camp. That's really crazy. The kind of foresight required to know that you'll probably end up in overtime in the playoffs against whoever. It doesn't really matter. Considering that these new overtime rules were put into place because of some games that you played in. And then every week of the playoffs as well, the Andy Reid and the Chiefs stressed the new overtime rules, going over their exact strategy, saying that they would give the ball to the other team first, let them do whatever they want to do, and even if they scored a touchdown, they would come right back, the Chiefs would come right back down the field, score a touchdown of their own, and go for two to try and win the game. So hats off for Andy Reid to have that kind of foresight. Just goes to show how great of a coach that guy is and has always been. And then on the other hand, for Shanahan and the 49ers, they had no idea what was going on. They had not stressed the new overtime rules or the difference between the playoffs and the regular season and the overtime rules. They just assumed that they wanted the ball first to go ahead and score a touchdown first and end it. Now, there are also some people who were saying that their defense had been on the field at the end of regulation. They just wanted to rest their defense. You could go either way, whatever level of apologist you want to be. But either way, the fact that the players were not fully aware of the new overtime rules and all that stuff, just a pretty big lapse for the 49ers and not a good look for your coaching. The new overtime rules coming back to bite them. It's not the first time that overtime rules have caught players and coaches off guard. I mean, if we remember Donovan McNabb not even thinking that a game could end in a tie. It really is the worst when an NFL game ends in a tie, though. For whatever reason, the Lions, I think the past two times that they've won 3 games in a season, they tied. They went 3-12-1 with Patricia and 3-13-1 in Dan Campbell's first season. Yeah, never fun when there's a tie. There's usually like one every couple seasons or so, and it's always annoying. I'm not sure the last time that 2 ties in a season happened, but I hope it doesn't. But anyway, so the 49ers coaches and players were caught with their pants down, and it's just a bad look for them. And it's just another blown double digit lead in the Super Bowl for Shanahan. The only guy to have coached in both overtime Super Bowls and unfortunately lose both overtime Super Bowls. Now, in the second half, another difference besides the coaching was the difference in quarterbacks. Now, Brock Purdy did pretty well in the first half. He went 10 of 15 and did what he had to do. They were winning at halftime, blah, blah, blah. But then in the second half, he didn't play as well. Now, I'm not going to say that he came out and lost them the game. You could blame that a lot more on perhaps some of the receiver play. But, I mean, Brock Purdy did have a hand in it, definitely. He ended up going 13 of 23 in the second half, including overtime. But if you just take the second half, it's only 9 of 16. Now, perhaps the pressure just got to him. Perhaps his relative inexperience got to him. I don't know. But then Mahomes turned it up in the second half, and you could tell that he was a guy on a mission. Mahomes down in the playoffs is never out. And so, yeah, the difference in quarterbacks really made itself apparent. Now, Brock Purdy, he could still get back to big games in this moment, but he's just not quite used to it. I mean, even some of the quote-unquote highlight plays in the Super Bowl were just Purdy highlights. Like, they weren't highlights. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go look up the Brock Purdy highlight videos on YouTube. Of course, highlights being in quotes. It's mostly just him, like, scrambling out of the pocket, then hitting a guy in the intermediate part of the field, 10 or 15 yards down the field, usually on the other side of the field, and then the guy just runs after the catch. Like, that's Purdy's game. He's not super flashy or anything. He just finds guys in the intermediate part of the field who have open space around them, and they just run after the catch. And that can win you stuff. But, when you got Mahomes who can do anything he wants to and then some, there's just a big difference there. Literally the best quarterback in NFL history while trailing is what I would consider Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, tale of two halves. The first half, Mahomes and the offense really struggled. They really struggled to get Kelsey involved. One target, one catch, 1 yard in the first half for Kelsey. Then he finishes the game with, 9 catches, 90 yards, something like that. So both guys there on the offense for the Chiefs really turned it up in the second half. Plus, Mahomes was able to use his scrambling ability. That little triple option looking play in the second half for the Chiefs looked really good. Caught the 49ers defense completely off guard because some of the players were quoted after the game saying that they were not expecting the design quarterback runs for Mahomes. And the news that came out today, it ended with Shanahan firing 49ers defense coordinator Steve Wilks. Now, I think that's just a culling, like a scapegoating thing. Of course, the 49ers defense wasn't as good this season as they were the season before. That's because the season before they were the number one defense in the NFL. You can't get any better than that. And sure, they lag behind a little bit, but I don't know if that's necessarily something that you fire Wilks for. I think that that's just a scapegoat thing. Steve Wilks will never get a fair rap, man. He'll never get a fair shake, whether it's as the one-year head coach of the Cardinals, whether it's as the interim head coach of the Panthers, the best run of Panthers football in at least 5 years, I guess, when he went 500 with that struggling team and really turned them around. Ruined the Lions' playoffs hopes. That's a pretty decent team as far as these recent Panthers teams have gone. So, yeah, bad shake for Wilks. Hopefully he lands somewhere pretty good. So, yeah, the dynasty is here. I don't think that they're going to necessarily extend the dynasty this upcoming season, but anything's certainly possible when you have the greatest one. I'll go and say he'll probably end up being the greatest quarterback of all time, Mahomes. Greatest tight end of all time, Travis Kelce. And one of the greatest coaches of all time, Andy Reid. When you have that combination, you have a good defense. They also locked up Coach Spagnuolo on the defensive side, so that defense is going to continue to play really well. Of course, it's going to be difficult for them to retain some of their players like Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know if you're necessarily able to keep both of those guys. They got some good players on this team that they're going to have to make some pretty difficult decisions about. So will they be able to continue to be this dominant? Perhaps. That's just something we'll have to see in the future. Anyway, just a little bit of fun to close out this Super Bowl episode here. We got some of the best Super Bowl memes from this past Super Bowl. Of course, everybody loves the memes that come out of the Super Bowl, whether it's Left Shark and Katy Perry, whether it's them messing up Sweet Victory with Travis Scott, which they were able to rectify this season, whether it's Adam Levine taking his shirt off, whether it's Tom Brady in 28-3, whatever it is, each Super Bowl has its own moment of glory. So, honorable mention is Dre Greenlaw tearing his Achilles while running out onto the field. That was one of the most unfortunate things I've ever seen. I don't know if it's the most embarrassing tear I've ever seen on the football field, doing something totally inane. The first thing that I thought of when I saw this play happen was Stephen Tulloch for the Lions, leaping for joy after making a sack and then tearing his ACL. That might be one of the most embarrassing ones I've ever seen. And then number 5, we will have Taylor Swift being shown on screen for about 52 seconds of broadcast time, which, I mean, to be honest, when you're watching a football game, that's about as long as there's action going on the field anyway. And plus, with them showing her maybe 5 seconds at a time, that might have equaled about 10 cutbacks over the course of the game, let alone how many times that they cut to her during the pre-game coverage. So that number might be a little misleading. I don't know the exact number of times that they actually cut to her, but, that's something we'll always remember, I guess, during the course of this season. Being a Chiefs fan for 3 months and then winning a championship, it doesn't get any better than that. A lot of people have been waiting for a bazillion years to watch their team win a championship. So good for people like that who just been introduced to the game and are able to enjoy it like that, which is something that we'll bring up a little later on the list also. And number 4, Ice Spice. She being explained the rules of the game on live TV is pretty funny. Then of course she threw up some signs and stuff, and just her general look for the game, I guess, is one that people will probably remember for a while. Then number 3, during the halftime show, we got Usher roller skating. Now that was pretty fun. With this halftime show, there wasn't a whole lot of as much flash, I guess you could say, as some years previous. But so I was kind of disappointed in it at first, but like the game, the performances kind of sunk in a little bit, and I can appreciate it. I can appreciate what they did. They didn't have to be super flashy or anything. It still had its memorable moments. And then number 2 is Usher and Alicia Keys. With that little embrace that they did that caused quite a stir with some people. It was all in good fun. But, there's some people putting out those memes about the work husband and everything. So those are pretty funny. It's a nice little cheeky moment there. And then number 1, I think that this is going to be remembered for a long time, and that's Travis Kelce screaming at Andy Reid to give him the ball and keep him involved. Allegedly, that's what Andy Reid said happened. But I just think it's funny how, like I said, millions of people being introduced to this game and this event in particular for the first time, and seeing something like that, which, we all know that he didn't mean it in a really mean way. He's just fired up and passionate about the game and his performance and the team's performance. So that's just a passionate moment in sports that we see time and time again. It doesn't mean that Travis Kelce is ever going to be abusive towards his spouse. It doesn't mean that Travis Kelce doesn't respect Andy Reid. It's just a heat of the moment thing where guys who are really passionate and really live this stuff are just really fired up and want to see what's best for the team and everybody. But yeah, whether you understood what was happening or not, that's a moment that's going to be remembered for a very long time. And so yeah, this was a pretty memorable Super Bowl for different reasons than most, but it was still a pretty entertaining game, and we can't wait to see the Lions take on whatever AFC opponent comes their way in next year's Super Bowl. So big season coming up. Get hyped.